They say the church is holy ground, a place where secrets cannot hide, where truth always shines brighter than lies. But sometimes, even in the house of God, shadows creep in. This is the story of a young woman who fell in love with a man of God, a love that was never meant to be. Her name was Amara. She was only 22, full of fire, full of beauty, full of life. She had grown up in the church since she was a child. Every Sunday, she would sit in the second row, eyes shining as she listened to the word of God. And there behind the pulpit stood the man who had unknowingly stolen her heart, Pastor Daniel. Pastor Daniel was not just a preacher. She was a man admired by everyone. His words carried power. His prayers shook the heart of many, and his presence commanded respect. Married with 2 children, he was the man people trusted for guidance, for counsel, for blessings, and behind his anointed voice and holy robe, he was still a man who fell. Amara admired him in silence. Every Sunday, she listened to his sermons, not just with her ears, but with her heart. She loved the way he spoke about forgiveness, about faith, about love. She loved the way his eyes sparkled when he smiled. She loved the way his voice calmed storms in people's lives. Slowly, unknowingly, she had fallen into a love that was not only dangerous, but forbidden. It all began one evening after Bible study. Amara stayed behind to help clean the church. As she packed up the chairs, Pastor Daniel walked in. He has forgotten his Bible on the pulpit. Their eyes met. For a moment, time froze. He smiled warmly. "Amara, you are always the last to leave," he said. She laughed nervously. "I just like making sure the house of God looks neat." "That is good," he replied, stepping closer. "The Lord bless you for your faithfulness." But as he handed her a chair, his hand brushed against hers. Just a touch, so light, so innocent, but something strange sparkled in that moment. Amara's heart skipped. She quickly pulled her hand away. Pastor Daniel cleared his throat, adjusted his ties, and left the hall. From that night, everything had changed. Their eyes found each other more often. Their conversations lingered longer than they should, and slowly, what began as respect turned into secret admiration. But the real storm began one rainy night. Amara was walking home after choir practice when heavy rain poured down. She had no umbrella. Pastor Daniel, driving by, stopped his car. "Get in," he said. She hesitated, but the rain was too heavy. She entered the car, her clothes soaked, clinging to her body. He glanced at her, trying not to notice. The silence between them was thick, heavier than the rain outside. Finally he spoke. "You should be careful, Amara. Walking home at night alone is dangerous." "I know, Pastor. Thank you for picking me." Her voice was soft, almost trembling. He looked at her again, and this time he could not deny it. His heart was beating faster. She was beautiful, innocent, tempting. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, fighting the thought in his head. When he dropped her at the gate, she turned to him and whispered, "Good night, Pastor." But he did not reply. Instead, his eyes betrayed him. For the first time, she saw it, the hidden fire in his gaze, a fire he had been trying to bury. Their eyes looked, the rain fell harder, and before he knew it, he leaned forward, just slightly, as if drowned by a force greater than himself. But then he stopped. "Good night, Amara," he said quickly and drove off. That night, neither of them slept. Both battled with thoughts they knew were dangerous, but the seed had already been planted. and soon the seed will grow into something no prayer could stop. The days that followed were no longer the same. Amara avoided looking at Pastor Daniel during service, but her heart betrayed her. Every word he preached felt like it was meant for her alone. Every time his eyes swept across the congregation, she felt it paused on her for a second too long. One Sunday, after preaching about temptation and endurance, Pastor Daniel's voice trembled slightly. His wife, Grace, clapped from the front, proud of her husband's message. But Amara, she was something deeper. She knew that those words came from his struggle, from the war he was fighting inside. After service, Pastor Daniel called her aside. His voice was firm, but his eyes were restless. "Amara, be careful," he said. This thing between us, it must stop before it destroys us." Her lips parted. "But Pastor, I have done nothing wrong." "You have done nothing wrong," he admitted, his voice breaking. "But your presence is pulling me to a place I cannot go." Amara lowered her head, tears burning her eyes. "Do you mean I should leave the church?" He froze. The thought of her absence pierced him more than her presence ever did. "No," he whispered, "don't leave. Just stay away from me." But how could she? The church was her home, her family, and the more they tried to stay away from each other, the more their hearts pulled back together. One late evening, Amara was alone in the church, practicing her choir song. Her voice echoed through the empty hall, sweet and broken, like an angel singing in pain. Pastor Daniel, passing by, stopped at the door. He stood there, watching her, listening to the purity of her heart. Something inside him snapped. He stepped in quietly. When she turned and saw him, she stopped singing. Their eyes met. The silence between them was louder than any hymn. "Amara," he whispered. Her tears spilled over. "Pastor, why does it feel like God is punishing me with this feeling?" He walked closer, because love, when placed in the wrong soil, grows into poison. But even as he said those words, his hand reached for hers, and this time he did not pull away. For the first time, he held her hand, his thumbs brushing her soft skin. It was wrong. They both knew it. Yet, in that moment, neither of them cared. That was the beginning of stolen glance turning into stolen moments, the beginning of short conversations after service turning into late night phone calls, and soon the man of God and the young woman were trapped in a web of secret affection. But secrets have a way of leaking. It began with Sister Ruth, a sharp-tongued woman in the choir. She noticed how Pastor Daniel's eyes lingered on Amara too often. She noticed how Amara blushed whenever his name was mentioned. And one evening, she caught sight of Amara stepping into Pastor Daniel's office. She didn't hear what was said, but she saw the way they came out, eyes guilty, faces tensed. But the next week, whispers began in the church. "Have you noticed the way Pastor looks at Amara? Amara is always in his office. What are they discussing for so long? Something is not right." The gossip spread like wildfire, and though no one had proof, the suspicion was enough to plant doubt in people's hearts. Pastor Daniel's wife, Grace, began to notice too. One night, as he lay beside her, she asked softly, "Daniel, is there something you are not telling me?" He turned away, hiding the storm in his eyes. "Nothing, Grace, nothing at all." But Grace was not a fool. She had lived with him for years. She knew when his heart was restless. She knew when his prayers were forced. And she knew when another woman had found a place in his soul. Amara too began to suffer. The church, that once felt like her safe place now felt like a cage. She could feel the stares, the whispers, the judgment. She prayed night after night for God to take the feelings away, but they grew stronger. And then the unthinkable happened. One evening, Pastor Daniel called Amara into his office to discuss the youth program. They sat close, their shoulders brushing. A storm raged outside, thunder shaking the winds. Fear, desire, guilt all mixed into one dangerous fire. Amara, he said, his voice hoarse, I cannot fight this anymore. Her breath quickened. Pastor, please. He reached for her face, his hand trembling, his eyes burning with forbidden fire. She closed her eyes, surrendering, and then their lips met. It was brief, but it was enough. Enough to cross the line they had sworn never to cross, even to steal their fate. And just at that moment, when they pulled apart, gasping, guilty, afraid, the office door creaked open. Standing there was Sister Ruth. Her eyes widened, her mouth fell open. For a second, silence filled the air. Then she whispered, Jesus Christ. And she ran out before they could stop her. The storm outside was nothing compared to the storm that was about to hit the church. The night Sister Ruth saw them, everything changed. She did not sleep. She paced in her room, torn between keeping quiet and exposing what she had seen. By morning, her tongue betrayed her. She whispered to one friend in the choir. That friend whispered to another. Within days, the story had spread through the church like wildfire. Some believed it, some doubted it, but everyone talked about it. On Sunday morning, the church was not the same. Eyes shifted towards Amara as she walked in. Mothers shook their heads. Brothers whispered. Sisters rolled their eyes. She could feel the judgment pressing down on her shoulders. Pastor Daniel mounted the pulpit, but his voice trembled. The words of his sermon trembled, broken and unsure. Grace, his wife, sat at the front, her eyes fixed on him, searching for answers he could not give. After service, the elders gathered in whispers. They spoke about discipline, about the name of the church, about shame, but none of them dared confront Pastor Daniel directly. Not yet. Amara, however, could not escape. One evening, as she walked home, Sister Ruth blocked her path. So, this is who you are. Ruth sneered, pretending to be holy while stealing another woman's husband. Amara's heart shattered. It's not what you think. But Ruth cut her off. Don't explain to me. Explain to God. Because very soon, the whole church will know. Amara ran home in tears, her chest heavy, her soul breaking. She prayed. She begged God to undo what had been done, but she knew the truth. Once a secret escapes into the wind, no prayer can bring it back. The real blow came when Grace, Pastor Daniel's wife, finally confronted him. One night, after the children had gone to bed, she stood in front of him, her face pale with anger and hurt. Daniel, she whispered, her voice shaking, tell me it's not true. Tell me you and that girl, that you have not broken your vows. His silence was louder than any confession. Grace staggered back, covering her mouth. My God, Daniel, you? Tears poured down from her cheeks. The man I trusted with my life, the man I defended before everyone, the man I believed was untouchable, had fallen. He tried to hold her, but she pushed him away. Do not touch me. Do not ever touch me again. That night, she packed her bags and took the children to her mother's house. The church erupted. Rumors turned into confirmed truth. Elders called the pastor to step down. Some members threatened to leave the church. Others demanded an emergency meeting. For the first time, the mighty man of God was reduced to a trembling man hiding in shame. Amara could not bear it. She stopped attending service. She locked herself indoors, afraid to show her face in public. Neighbors whispered, friends abandoned her. Even her family scolded her for bringing shame to their name. One evening, as she wept on her bed, a loud knock came on her door. She opened it, and there was Grace. Amara froze, speechless. Grace stepped inside, her face unreadable. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Grace spoke. Amara, do you know what you have done? Tears streamed down Amara's face. Mommy Grace, I never planned this. I swear. I tried to fight it. I tried to run away from it. But my heart betrayed me. Grace shook her head. Your heart. Do you think that marriage is built on following every desire of the heart? Do you think love is enough to excuse sin? Amara fell to her knees. I am sorry. Please forgive me. Grace looked down at her, pain burning in her eyes. Forgiveness belongs to God. But understand this, your actions have broken a family, destroyed a man's ministry, and stained the altar of God. And no matter how sorry you are, the scars will remain. She turned to leave, but just before she stepped out, she whispered, be careful, Amara, for what begins in secret always ends in the open. The door closed behind her, and Amara collapsed on the floor, sobbing. Pastor Daniel, now stripped of his position, avoided the public eye. He no longer stood behind the pulpit. He no longer prayed with boldness. The same lips that once preached fire and holiness now trembled with guilt. His name was dragged through mud. Members left the church in anger. His life's work crumbled before his eyes. In the middle of it all, Amara discovered something that would change everything again. She missed her period. At first, she thought it was stress, but when 2 weeks passed and she knew, fear gripped her heart. She bought a test kit. She locked herself in her bedroom, and when she saw the result, she dropped it to the floor, her hands trembling. She was pregnant. Her heart pounded. She pressed her hands to her stomach, tears streaming down her face. God, why? Why now? Why me? It was no longer just love, no longer just scandal. Now, there was a child whose very existence could destroy what was left of Pastor Daniel's name. And she knew, sooner or later, the truth would come out. Amara stared at the pregnancy test lying on the cold bathroom floor. Her hands shook. Her chest rose and fell in a panic. How could this be? How could her secret sin not grow inside her? A living evidence of everything she and Pastor Daniel had tried to hide. She sat in the corner of her room, hugging her knees, whispering to herself, maybe if I keep quiet, maybe no one will know. Maybe I can carry this in silence. But silence is never safe, not when a scandal already danced on everyone's lips. 3 weeks later, Sister Ruth saw her at the market. Amara's stomach was still flat, but her body looked different. Sister Ruth's sharp eyes caught it instantly. By the following Sunday, whispers filled the church again. Have you seen Amara lately? She looks pregnant. Pregnant? Jesus Christ. Could it be Pastor Daniel's? The gossip spread faster than wildfire. Before long, the elders summoned Amara to the closed meeting. She stood trembling before them, her hands shaking, her eyes swollen from crying. One of the elders asked Amara, we hear rumors. We need to know the truth. Are you with child? Her lips quivered. For a moment, She considered lying, but the weight of her chest was too heavy. Her voice came out in a whisper. "Yes, I am." The room fell into stunned silence. "And who is responsible?" another elder demanded. Tears burst from her eyes. She dropped to her knees. "Please, forgive me. It is Pastor Daniel." The elders gasped. Some buried their face in their hands. Others shook their heads in disbelief. The news spread like thunder across the church. By evening, the whole town knew. The pastor had fathered a child with a church girl. Grace, his wife, collapsed when she heard it. Her family rushed her to the hospital. Her heart could not carry the shame. Daniel himself disappeared for 2 days, unable to face anyone, unable to even pray. The man who once stood bold behind the pulpit now hid like a criminal in his own home. But the final twist was yet to come. When Daniel finally returned to face the elders, his voice was broken. "I have sinned," he confessed. "I am guilty, but I will take responsibility of the child." The church shook. Some members wept. Others shouted in anger. But in the middle of it all, Elder Moses, the oldest man in the church, raised his hand and said, "Brethren, before you cast stone, know this: the altar has been stained. Yes, but sometimes God allows disgrace to remind us that even preachers are men. If we destroy him completely, what lesson will we teach the world?" That there is no restoration? The church felt silent. Grace, weak and broken, walked into the hall, supported by her mother. Everyone turned. She looked at her husband, tears running down her cheek. For a moment, the world froze. Then, with a trembling voice, she said, "I cannot carry this pain, but I will not curse you. I release you to God. May he judge between us." She turned and walked away, leaving Daniel sobbing on his knees. Amara too was shattered. She stood before the congregation, her stomach now carrying life, her soul carrying shame. She whispered through her tears, "I never wanted this. I never wanted to destroy your family. I only wanted love. But love outside God's will is poison. Learn from me. Do not fall into my mistake." The congregation stared at her. Some spitted her, some hated her, some prayed silently. From that day, Pastor Daniel was removed from the pulpit. He lived in silence, a broken man. Grace never returned to him. The church divided, some leaving, some staying, all scared forever. But Amara, she carried her pregnancy alone. Every step she took was heavy with shame. Every face she met full of judgments. But deep inside, she held on to one thing, that maybe, just maybe, God could still bring light out of the darkness she had created. Months later, she gave birth to a baby boy. She held him in her arms, tears streaming down her face. This child, she whispered, will not carry the sins of his parents. He will be my second chance. He will be proud. He will be proof that even from a forbidden love, God can still write a story of grace. But the scars remain. The pulpit stood empty for months, a haunting reminder that even men of God can fall. And every time the congregation gathered, they remembered the pastor who lost everything because of the forbidden love, and the young woman who paid the price with him. Behind the pulpit, there had been fire, a fire that burned not only the man and the woman, but an entire church. And longer after the scandal faded, people still whispered behind the pulpit, a forbidden love was born. Thank you for listening to my story. Please like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel.